Welcome back to our channel. Today's story is full of courage, love, and fate. The cowboy saved her from wolves. The Apache girl claimed his heart. A brave cowboy, a wild rescue, and a bond beyond worlds. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Where are you watching from? Let's get started. The wind rolled across the wide New Mexico plains like a restless spirit, stirring the tall grass and carrying the scent of dust, pine, and faraway rain. The moon hung low and silver over the horizon, painting the desert in shades of blue and gray. Jake Carson rode through the night on his chestnut horse, Dusty, the rhythmic clop of hooves echoing softly in the emptiness. He was a man of few words and many miles, a drifter turned rancher with eyes hardened by loss and hands calloused by labor. The land was his companion, its silence the only friend he'd ever trusted completely. Jake had spent the past week driving cattle down from the northern hills to his ranch near the Pecos River. The job had gone as smooth as a man could hope for, but the trail was long and lonely. He missed the warmth of a fire, the simple comfort of coffee, and the creak of the old porch swing that hung from his cabin's beams. Yet as he rode through the night, something in the air changed. The wind shifted, sharp and urgent. Dusty's ears pricked forward, his body tensing beneath the saddle. Jake reached instinctively for his rifle, his senses alert. Then he heard it, a sound that tore through the quiet plains like a knife through silk. A scream, not the cry of an animal but of a woman. His heart kicked against his ribs, and before he had time to think, he was urging Dusty into a gallop. The horse thundered across the sand and sagebrush, the sound of his hooves swallowed by the wind. The scream came again, closer now, rising and falling in raw terror. Somewhere near the ridge, where the moonlight cast long, ghostly shadows, he saw movement. A pack of wolves had cornered someone against a boulder. Their eyes glowed pale and merciless in the dark, their growls deep and hungry. In the middle of the circle stood a young woman, clutching a small knife that flashed weakly in the moonlight. Her long black hair whipped around her face and her legs trembled beneath her torn buckskin dress. Jake didn't think, he acted. He fired a shot into the air, the rifle's crack echoing across the canyon. The wolves hesitated, snarling in confusion. Another shot followed, and this time they scattered into the night, melting back into the wilderness. Jake dismounted, boots hitting the ground with a thud. He kept his rifle low but ready as he approached her. She stared at him with wild, fearful eyes, unsure if this new stranger was savior or threat. Up close he saw she was native, Apache by the cut of her dress and the beads woven into her braids. Her cheeks were streaked with dirt, and a thin line of blood traced her arm where a wolf's teeth had grazed her. "You're safe now," he said gently, lowering his rifle. "They're gone." She didn't answer. Her breathing came fast, shallow. When he took a cautious step closer, she lifted the knife, her hand trembling but determined. "No hurt," she managed to say, her English broken but clear enough. Jake nodded slowly, hands raised in peace. "No hurt. I swear it." His voice was calm, steady, the same tone he used to calm a spooked horse. After a tense moment, her shoulders sagged and she let the knife fall to her side. "You're bleeding," he said softly, pulling a clean handkerchief from his saddlebag. She flinched when he touched her arm, but didn't pull away as he tied the cloth gently around the wound. "My name's Jake Carson," he offered, hoping to ease her fear. "What's yours?" She hesitated, eyes darting toward the dark horizon as if expecting someone or something to emerge from it. Finally, she whispered, "Tala." The word rolled off her tongue like wind over stone. Jake nodded. "That's a strong name." He glanced around the empty plains, frowning. "Where's your camp? Your people?" Tala's gaze fell to the ground. "Gone," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "Soldiers come. Fire, guns, horses. I run." Jake felt a twist in his chest. He'd heard of such things. Villages burned, families scattered. The frontier wasn't kind to anyone, least of all to those caught between worlds. He led her to his horse, wrapping his long duster coat around her shoulders. The night was cold and her skin felt like ice. "You can ride?" he asked. She nodded faintly. He helped her up onto Dusty's back, climbing behind her. They rode in silence through the dark, the wind biting at their faces. Jake guided the horse toward the small cabin he called home, hidden in a patch of cottonwoods near the river. When they arrived, he helped Tala down and opened the door. The smell of pine smoke and coffee lingered from the morning. He lit a lantern, its warm glow chasing the shadows from the room. Tala stood near the fire, staring at the simple furnishings, the wooden table, the iron stove, the old rifle mounted above the door. She seemed unsure whether to sit or run. Jake busied himself with the coffee pot, giving her space. "You can rest here tonight," he said after a moment. You're safe." She glanced up at him, eyes narrowing slightly. "Why you help me?" The question hung in the air, sharp and searching. Jake met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Because no one deserves to die alone in the dark," he said simply. She studied him for a long time, then nodded once. He handed her a tin cup of hot coffee, and she accepted it with both hands, blowing gently before sipping. The warmth seemed to soften her. He noticed the way her eyes caught the light, dark and deep like the desert itself. Outside, the wind howled against the cabin walls, and rain began to fall in soft, steady sheets. Inside, the fire cracked and popped, filling the silence with its gentle rhythm. Jake spread an extra blanket near the fire and turned away as she lay down, respecting her modesty. He settled into his old chair, rifle across his knees, eyes fixed on the flickering flames. Sleep came slowly. His mind replayed the image of her standing alone against the wolves, fearless even in the face of death. There was something about her, something wild and unbroken, that stirred a feeling he hadn't known in years. As dawn crept across the plains, Tala stirred beneath the blanket. Jake was already awake, brewing coffee, the morning sun spilling through the window. For a moment, she simply watched him. This quiet cowboy who had saved her life for no reason other than decency. She didn't understand him, not yet, but in her heart, a strange warmth began to grow, fragile as the first light of day breaking over the desert. Outside, the wolves were gone, but the memory of that night lingered. A reminder that fate sometimes brings two lost souls together in the loneliest places, when the world is darkest, and the only light left is the fire they share. Morning light washed over the plains, painting the desert gold. Jake stepped out onto the porch, the boards creaking under his boots. The air smelled of rain and cedar, and for the first time in months he felt something close to peace. Inside, Tala sat quietly by the window, watching a hawk circle high above the mesa. Her arm was healing, but her eyes still carried shadows. Jake poured her a cup of coffee, setting it gently on the table. She accepted it without a word. Their silence was easy now, comfortable in a way neither of them had known for a long time. Over the next few days, Tala began to find her place in his small world. She helped tend the fire, gathered herbs from the riverbank, and even smiled once when Dusty nudged her hand for attention. Jake noticed the change but said nothing. He was careful with words, believing that some things, like trust, needed space to grow. Still, he couldn't deny the warmth that came when she looked at him, or the quiet ache he felt when she turned away. She was a mystery carved by hardship, and he found himself wanting to understand her story. One evening, as the sun bled red over the horizon, Tala spoke for the first time about her past. Her tribe had lived in the high country, far from white towns and soldiers. But one night the bluecoats came. They burned everything, homes, fields, even the sacred drums her father kept. She had fled into the darkness, chased by gunfire, her family scattered or dead. As she spoke, her voice trembled, and Jake saw the tears she tried to hide. He didn't interrupt. When she finished, he said quietly, "You made it through." "That's strength, Tala." She shook her head. "Not strength, just breath left in me." Jake leaned back, the firelight flickering across his weathered face. "Sometimes that's all strength is," he said. "Just finding a way to keep breathing." The words hung between them, simple but true. Tala met his gaze then, and for the first time she smiled. A small, hesitant thing, but real. It softened something inside him he didn't know was still there. That night, she slept without fear, and he sat awake for hours listening to the sound of her even breathing, realizing he hadn't felt this alive since before the war took everything he'd known. The days grew warmer, and spring began to stir the land. Jake taught Tala how to ride Dusty, guiding her hands on the reins, steadying her when she lost balance. She laughed, light and clear, and the sound caught him off guard. It had been years since he'd heard laughter that pure. In return, Tala showed him how to track by the stars, how to listen for the hum of water beneath dry ground. They shared their worlds piece by piece, Cowboy and Apache, two souls bound by the same loneliness. And slowly the distance between them began to fade. But peace never lasts long on the frontier. One afternoon, Jake spotted dust clouds on the horizon, soldiers on horseback, their uniforms glinting in the sun. He cursed under his breath. The cavalry had been combing the area for escaped hostiles. If they found Tala here, she'd be taken. Or worse. Without hesitation, he saddled Dusty and gathered what supplies he could. "We have to go," he told her. Fear flickered in her eyes, but she didn't argue. He led her to a cave hidden by brush near the river, a place only he knew. Stay here until I come back, he said firmly. Tala caught his arm. They hurt you if they find her here, she said softly. Jake looked down at her, his jaw set. Let them try. He rode back toward the cabin just as the soldiers arrived, a cloud of dust trailing behind their horses. Their captain, a sharp-faced man with cold eyes, dismounted first. Evening, Carson, he said. We're searching for an Apache girl. Ran from a reservation up north. You seen anyone? Jake met his stare without flinching. Ain't seen a soul for days, he replied. The captain's gaze drifted past him toward the cabin. Mind if we look around? Jake's hand tightened on his rifle. You're standing on my land, Captain. That's already far enough. The tension hung heavy. For a moment, Jake thought it might come to blood, but finally the captain smirked and motioned to his men. Mount up, he ordered. We'll move on. As they rode away, Jake waited until they disappeared over the ridge before exhaling the breath he'd been holding. He returned to the cave that night, his shirt torn and dusted with sweat. Tala ran to him as he appeared from the darkness. You're safe, she whispered. He smiled faintly. Told you I would be. The relief in her eyes said everything her words couldn't. Later, as they sat by the small fire, Tala looked into the flames and spoke softly. Why you do this? Risk life for me? Jake was quiet for a long moment. Because somewhere between the storm and the sunrise, he said, his voice low, you became my reason to fight again. Tala's eyes filled with tears, and she turned away, unable to speak. He reached out, his fingers brushing against hers, and in that simple touch, everything unsaid passed between them. Fear, gratitude, love. Outside, the coyotes sang to the moon, their cries wild and haunting, echoing through the night. When dawn came, the world felt different. The soldiers were gone, the danger passed, but a choice remained. Tala stood by the river, her reflection trembling in the water. If I stay, she said quietly, your people hate you. If I go, my heart breaks. Jake stepped beside her, his voice barely above a whisper, then let it break in my arms. She turned, tears glistening on her cheeks, and he kissed her, slow, deep, full of everything they'd both lost and found again. In the months that followed, legends began to drift through the frontier towns. Travelers spoke of a cowboy and an Apache woman who lived deep in the canyons, free and untamed as the land itself. Some said they'd seen them riding together at dawn, her hair streaming behind her, his hat tilted against the rising sun. Others claimed the two vanished into the wilderness, leaving behind only footprints in a story the desert would carry forever. Of the night a cowboy saved a girl from wolves, and how in doing so she saved his heart in return.